All right, we'll go ahead and call this fifth meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Transportation to order. Senator Higdon. Before we call the roll, we would like to remind those of you who are attending remotely that when you logged into the meeting, you were muted. So please unmute your mic to speak. And for those of you attending by video conference, when you answer the roll, please specify whether you are in your office here in Frankfort or back in your home district. And if you are attending remotely and would like to be recognized to ask a question, please use the chat function on the application to send a chat message on Zoom, and staff, and anyone on staff who are monitoring the meeting, and we'll get you put on a list. All the meeting materials for today's meeting are currently available on the Transportation Committee page on the LRC website. So at this time, Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Berg. Senator Embry.
Present in the room.
Senator Hornback. Senator Smith.
Present in my district.
Senator Storm. Senator Turner. Senator Wheeler. Senator Wilson.
Present in room.
Senator Wise.
Present out of district remotely.
Senator Yates.
Present by district remotely.
Representative Bojanowski.
Present in the room.
Representative Branscombe.
Present in the 83rd District.
Representative Bratcher.
Here in my district in Jefferson County.
Representative Bridges.
Here in the room.
Representative Dixon. Representative Fleming.
Present in the room.
Representative Hale. Representative Heverin.
Present in the room.
Representative Regina Huff. Representative Thomas Huff.
Here in the room.
Representative Lewis.
Present in the room.
Representative Maddox. Representative McCool. Representative McPherson.
Here in the room.
Representative Miller.
Here in the room.
Representative Santoro.
Here in the room.
Representative Smith.
Present in the room.
Representative Stevenson.
Present in the room.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Present remotely from the 95th District.
Representative Thomas.
Present in the room.
Representative Westrom. Representative Wheatley.
Here in the room.
Co-Chair Higdon.
Here in the room.
Chairman Upchurch.
Here in the room. We do have a quorum. We're duly constituted to do business. At this time, we have the approval of the September 20 meeting minutes. I need a motion
So
for
moved.
approval. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Okay, we do have a pretty jam-packed meeting for today. Very interesting stuff about aviation in Kentucky. This time, first on the agenda is an overview of the Department of Aviation and General Aviation in Kentucky. And this time I'd ask Commissioner Mark Carter to come up, and Deputy Commissioner Brad Schwant. Deputy Commissioner, the floor is yours.
Okay. Well, good afternoon. I'm Commissioner Mark Carter, the Department of Aviation. With me is Brad Schwant, the Deputy Commissioner, and Chairman Upchurch and Chairman Higdon and members of the committee. Thanks for having us today. Our task is to give you a little bit of background about the Department of Aviation and General Aviation in Kentucky, but I may stray a little bit from that and talk about aviation trends just generally as we go through this. As we look at our first slide here, generally the mission of the department is to promote aviation and across Kentucky. And it's a time of significant change in the industry, as I think you are all aware. We have innovation that's occurring in aircraft power systems. One of the pictures that you see there in the middle and the upper part of that slide.
Okay, we're not getting the slides up on the, get some technical assistance here.
Do I need to press a special button? All right.
Where is the Zoom? Hold on just a second.
We'll be airborne here in just a moment.
Sorry about that. I just thought I launched it.
No, you're fine. I'll see it yet. Is it on?
No, you got
the
background.
We got the background screen.
Sorry.
Can I pull the presentation up now?
Try.
Hang on just a minute here. Commissioner Carter, you're a pilot. Hey, here we go.
Start slideshow, yeah.
What do you call this in the cockpit?
Something you have to troubleshoot in a hurry.
I think we're up and going now.
All right. I'll have to apologize for my voice. I did attend certain sporting events Saturday night. I contributed, I think, to a couple of the illegal procedure penalties. Nevertheless, the Department of Aviation is the Commonwealth's resource for all things aviation, and it's really an exciting time to be involved in aviation. As I was mentioning, as you look at that screen, both Deputy Schwant and I both attended a conference recently of state aviation directors, and we heard a presentation from a company that's developed a completely electric aircraft, and it's shown there in that middle picture on the top. That has the potential to dramatically change air travel, both here in the Commonwealth and across the world. There are innovations that have gone on or are taking place in technology and avionics, urban air mobility, drones, all these things that you've all read about. They represent really exciting times for us, and I think probably the most significant thing is the number of new jobs that are available as pilots, mechanics, aviation technicians, flight crew members. These are great jobs in Kentucky, centered around our commercial airports, but our general aviation airports are really the proving grounds for folks that end up in those kinds of professions. And so it's a great time to be involved in aviation in Kentucky. If you look at our slide there, the bullet points, I won't read them to you, but they list out some of the responsibilities of the department. A couple of things I'll comment on there is we do have a fleet of aircraft that the Commonwealth owns, and under the Commonwealth's rules, those are available to elected leaders for travel throughout the Commonwealth. I think the slowest airplane we have will get you from Paducah to Pikeville in about 2.5 hours. And when you think about some of the travel that you have to take across the state, it really can increase the efficiency of folks who are in important positions doing business on behalf of the Commonwealth. We also we own 4 airports in Kentucky. The Commonwealth owns 4 airports, including the one here in Frankfort, the capital city airport. These are important to our local communities and also important to economic development. Just last week, I guess, we had the Ford announcement, and we had several jets on the tarmac here at Capital City Airport, and you know, it is the gateway and the flagship general aviation airport for Kentucky. I am a private pilot. I think as many of you know, I've traveled across the Commonwealth. I've visited about half of the airports in Kentucky. I operate out of Bowman Field, and Lake Cumberland Regional are sort of the 2 airports that I spend most of my time in. They are great assets to their communities, and I'm pleased to be part of the leadership of the state's aviation program. If we can go to the next slide, Brad. The department is a small but effective department. We have a total of about 19 folks in the department. You can see them there. The 3 at the top, the commissioner, deputy commissioner, and then Shelby Peel, who's behind us here, is also with the department and in the leadership area. The department itself has 6 people in it, and they're listed on the left side of that slide. You can see there it's focused, the primary focus has been on engineering and safety. That's just the first thing that we have to be focused on in this area. And we do have some gaps in our staffing, which we'll talk about a little later. But those are the folks that are responsible for aviation in Kentucky. On the right side of the slide shows the Capital City Airport, 11 folks there, and you can see the list of those folks and what they do. I'm going to turn it over for a few minutes to Deputy Schwant, who will go through some of the overview of our state aviation system, and then I will come back at the end to talk about some of the things we need to do in the future.
All right. Well, thank you. Just kind of an overview of who we are and our state airport system and where our funding comes from. There's 57 what we call public use airports. There's another one that's under construction in Gallatin County right now, and hoping to start paving on that here in the next month or 2 and be landing airplanes by late spring in 22. And then there's 94 private airports around Kentucky, and then there's 114 private heliports. We have no public heliports in the state of Kentucky. They're all private, and most of those are hospitals. And then we have 2 military air facilities, and then we have a drone port. And based on a 2017 study that we had commissioned, and this data is a little bit old compared to some of the expansion that we've had up in CVG, but that provides for almost 24,000 on-airport jobs and contributes almost $1.4 billion on airport property payroll. And this picture here just shows the dispersion of all the airports across Kentucky, and they're all part of what the FAA calls a NIPIAS, National Plan of Integrated Airport System. And the FAA plan for really every state in the union is to have an airport no closer than 30 miles apart from each other. And so if you get 2 that are too close to each other, then they won't be part of that NIPIAS, but it could still be a state-sponsored airport. And you'll see 2 airports, one in the lower right-hand corner and then one in the kind of center. Those are the airports that are proposed. The one that's up top, that's Gallatin County. It's up in Sparta, Kentucky. And then the next airport that's circled is down in Letcher County, and that'll fill that gap we have down there in the NIPIAS. And the FAA does kind of 3-year cycles on new airports that they fund. And in this current cycle, there are only 5 airports that the FAA is funding, new airports. 4 of those are in Alaska, and 1 is in Kentucky, and that is Sparta. And in the next cycle of 5, we already designated to get one of those as well, and that's in Letcher County. And so that's pretty neat. Out of, not many other people are getting new airports, and Kentucky is. And I think that's a good that's representative of what we're doing here in Kentucky. So to getting into some of our funding, if you have any questions specifically to the slides, go ahead and ask, and then we'll have general questions at the end, of course. But KRS 183-525, that's really our funding statute, and it talks about everything that we get for state airports comes from jet fuel tax, and that can be at a commercial airport or a smaller airport or a smaller corporate jet, but it's jet fuel tax, and those go into the jet fuel tax fund, and those have to be spent on aviation activities in Kentucky. And we spend everything we make. We don't have a slush fund. Everything that comes in goes out. And we also receive state or federal appropriations and other grants, and we also get investment monies on the money that we when we receive our jet fuel tax, we know how much we have, and then we forecast what kind of projects we're going to do. And by the time we program those and we actually have construction and then close on the project, it'll be about 2 years. And during that time, our money that we've taken in makes money. So we're efficient in that regard, and I think most state agencies are. And those funds are used for the development, the rehabilitation, maintenance of publicly owned, operated aviation facilities, and for other aviation programs within the Commonwealth. And basically, it's anything aviation related. And then we had for 4 years, what we call a pavement maintenance allocation. It was almost $10 million a year for 4 years. And we were using that to focus on the pavements, the degrading pavements, and that would include taxiways, runways, and aprons. And we're still spending that money, even though we haven't received any in the past 2 years. And we're wrapping up that. At the end of this year, we'll be done spending that pavement money. And we have a local matching program with the FAA. So from a federal standpoint, they give a lot of money to our local airports, both general aviation and commercial. And so the general aviation airports get $150,000 a year from the FAA, and they can save that for 3 years, and then the fourth year spend it. So they have up to $600,000 to spend on runway projects or really any kind of projects that are approved by the FAA. And then we will match up to 7.5% some of those. And that 7.5%, actually there's a 10% match that is required. And because the FAA will say, we have a project, let's say it's $1 million, they're gonna spend $900,000, then someone's got to come up with the rest. And it's usually 7.5% from the state, and the rest comes from the local community, whether it's the city or the county or a combination of both. And there's 51 airports that are classified in Kentucky, and there are 6 that are not. And the 6 that are not, they do not get those federal funds. And that's usually because they don't have any based aircraft, kind of like our state airports, or those airports are too close to each other and they're not in the NIPIAS. And last year, or in FY20, we had $4 million in matching funds. There were a lot of federal projects. And then last year, we had $2.5 million in matching funds, and that comes out of our jet fuel tax. And then looking at the discretionary funds, those discretionary funds kind of it's not like the what you get every year, the $150,000. It's just random based on monies that are available. And GA Airports got $18.5 million in FY21 in discretionary funding, and that's not including all the COVID money, and there was quite a bit of that. All right, on project selection, basically we look at safety, maintenance, the design of the airport, function of it. We have a state inspection program that we go through, and we inspect every airport, and we do that on behalf of the FAA. And things that we find on our inspections determine what our projects are going to be. And then as well as pavement degradation, and that's probably the primary driver of where all of our expenditures go. And we call that the Pavement Condition Index, PCI, and that's the data that drives where we're going to spend all of our money. And there's a lot of things that will to drive that, and it's laid out there. Policy, layout plans, and those airport layout plans, ALP, that's what we give the FAA and say, okay, if we're going to do a project in the future, it has to be on our ALP. So whether it's the state or a federal project, it's got to be in that plan. And then they also have what they call capital improvement plans. That's FA driven. And then we have our state maintenance improvement plan. And so with that and the inspections and also all the communication that we have with the boards, and we communicate back and forth about things they need to maintain their airports and make them viable economic entities for their communities.
One point of interjection I'd make here is that one of the suggestions I received as sort of constructive feedback for the department is that we could be, quote, more transparent around how we decide which projects are prioritized and get funded. My at least first few months working in the department, I can tell you with just as straight as I can be that the process is very much engineering and safety driven. There's nothing untoward about it, but we recognize that we could be more transparent about it. So one of the things that was underway even before I arrived was an effort to construct a set of criteria that could be published on our website, and then the projects that were under consideration could be published as well as those that were selected for investment. So we'll be focusing on getting that done. I hesitate to promise a date, but it's a priority for us, and with our staff, we'll get it done as soon as we can.
All right, so this slide is just kind of a representation of the money we spent in FY21 around the state. And it just shows that the money that we get, and you look in the lower right-hand corner, it was $17.5 million that we spent on projects, and that included money from the previous year. And but it just shows that they're spread around the state, and some projects are obviously bigger than others, but it represented almost close to 60 projects around the state. And the next slide, these are the pavement fund monies that we have left that we're wrapping up, and there's just a few of those left. You can see some of it went to Paducah Airport and helping them with their terminal and their apron on their expansion. And then you can see there's some money that was spent on the pavement for going forward for Gallatin. So the jet fuel tax in FY22 has pretty much all been accounted for, and it's almost $15 million. And again, it's kind of spread around the state. A few less projects in number and a little bigger in scope, and a lot of those are runway and taxiway pavement projects, which we were funding out of the pavement fund, and so now they're coming out of the jet fuel tax, and so there's less number of projects, but still we spend everything we make, and we're addressing the pavement issues that we have. So if you look at the funding that we get, you can kind of just go back over the past couple of years and then going forward, and these are all based on the going forward numbers are based on the Record E. But you can see we had a drop in 21 due to COVID and the jet fuel tax, and those are net. You know, we probably in FY21 we probably received about $12.5 million, but we had to maybe a little more, and then we had to debt service on previous projects and administrative cost and things like that. So we ended up with about $9.2 million for projects, and then we had in 22. Looks like we're going to have $14 million, and then we're projecting that out for the next 2 years, and that's what we kind of plan on. So if you go further out into the future and look at our needs, we have the pavement maintenance need that's based on the study that was shared with the caucus, and basically $10 million a year going forward is what we think until we do the next study is what will eventually get us to where we equilibrium on our pavements. And then it becomes a lot cheaper, almost 50% of the cost once you get a pavement maintenance program established when all your pavements are up to what they call an 80% pavement condition index. And then we have other projects that are what we call vertical structures, fencing, safety lighting, and so we forecast through 2027, and you can see that it's 18 million, then 15, then 19, and then we have specific projects on spreadsheets that kind of back into those numbers.
Okay, just a few minutes more, and we'll take questions. But just thought I would walk through some of the critical needs we have. And first and foremost, it is the airports and essentially the runway environment. And when I say that, I'm talking about the pavement the aircraft lands on, the taxiways where the aircraft taxis off the runway, the ramp where they sit, the approach lighting, approach paths, making sure that that it's a safe approach to the runway. All of that sort of factors into the critical need, which is to make sure that our airports are safe operating environments for aircraft coming in. I think we shared with the Aviation and Aerospace Caucus that a study was done in 2018 of pavement condition in Kentucky. It showed at the time a need for about $120 million of pavement improvements over a 7-year period. Obviously, a number of those projects have been completed now, but as you all know, other airports have gone without investment for that period of time. So, we need to update that study. We're going to do an abbreviated update that we are preparing now that would be ready prior to the session this coming January, and then we can also do a study of runways now using drones. And when this previous study was done, effectively what happens is engineers go to the airport, they walk the runway, and they basically sample a percentage of a runway to determine what its condition is. And now with drone technology, you can look at the entire runway and make a more complete assessment, and also gather a considerable amount of data that can be used for planning our pavement maintenance as we look forward. So one of our intentions in 2022, one of the department's goals will be to complete a drone study of all the runways in Kentucky, and of course that would be funded out of the proceeds from the jet fuel tax. So that's our plan moving forward there. Our priorities, if you go to the next slide, Brad. Our priorities as a department are really three things, and I mentioned maintaining and improving our airports, and of course the runways are a key portion of that. But the other thing I think we have to keep in mind is that our airports are the front door in many of our communities for economic development. When a company comes to a local community to consider making an investment there, most of the time they're coming in on corporate aircraft and they're landing at your local airport. Just last week we had Ford in here with a number of aircraft, and we took good care of them at the Capital City Airport, but we did get comments that some of our facilities there, our restrooms are dated. It doesn't make the same impression on a corporate leader that a place like Lexington would make with a facility like TAC Air. So one of the things we have to really be concerned about as a department, and I think as leaders in the Commonwealth, is that we need other investment in our airports. Terminals, hangars are important, fuel systems. You need Jet A at airports if you're going to have corporate jets come in. So we need a plan to address those things at all of our airports, and that's one of the things that will be a priority for us as we look forward. And I forgot to mention, when you think about fueling up aircraft now, it's putting avgas or Jet A in the tank. It's going to be charging stations in a few years, and so that's another thing that needs to be considered for our airport infrastructure. The second thing, and the thing that I think presents the greatest opportunity for us as a Commonwealth, is the opportunity for careers in aviation. Boeing just released updated forecast for the worldwide need for pilots, mechanics, flight crew members, and it was over 500,000, or in the neighborhood of 500,000 for each of those categories in North America alone. We have great training programs here. I've visited EKU and their program, and I know they're presenting later. They're doing fantastic things there, and they're about at capacity, so they need room to grow that 4-year program. The community college system has, and in particular Madisonville Community College, Somerset, and Jefferson County, all have great programs that are focused on pilot training in Madisonville and Muhlenberg County, helicopter pilots in Madisonville, fixed-wing pilots in Muhlenberg County. We have mechanics programs in Somerset and Jefferson County. Commissioner Schwant is actually on the board of the Jefferson County Aviation Mechanic Program and has been active there. And then, of course, in Somerset, we have a great program that's been in place for a number of years. So building opportunities in aviation jobs is really important as a department. It's primarily been a function of the commissioner and the deputy commissioner in the past, but I think we need to play a more active and coordinating role in that particular area. As I mentioned earlier, these are great opportunities for our young people, folks coming out of the military. An aviation mechanic, an airframe and power plant mechanic with 7 or 8 years experience can make $90,000 a year. Median household income in Kentucky is $55,000 a year. So that's a great vocation. Airline transport pilots, playing in the big leagues with companies like Delta or UPS, can make very healthy 6-digit salaries. And so it's just a great opportunity, and we need focus there. And then finally, just promoting aviation as an economic, both a target for economic development, but also a tool. At one of the visits that I had the opportunity to make as I first came into this role was down to Whitley County, where Firestone was announcing an investment in that community. There's a great airport in Williamsburg. There's a nice airport in London. That mattered to Firestone. So we need to keep that in mind as we look across the Commonwealth for opportunities for economic development and use aviation as a tool in that regard. But also think about our airports and aviation as an economic development opportunity for the Commonwealth in and of itself. And with that, I'll just go to the last slide and just give you a little bit of an update on where we're going from here. Representative Fleming, I think, admonished me at the Aviation and Aerospace caucus that he'd like to see a business plan, and so that an investment that the Commonwealth might make in aviation could be understood in terms of a return on investment. And I heard that loud and clear. And so what we've been working on is really what you would expect, an assessment of the current environment, developing a vision for the future, and then a plan to get there. And so what we're doing is, as I've listed on the slide, is just that, updating our runway study. I think we're seeking to be collaborative with all the interested parties. I put the legislature on here, but it's, we want to work with the commercial airports, with our educators, with the business community to develop a plan that we can bring back here that you can consider for investment as we move forward. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes our prepared remarks.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Carter. I do want to thank you for your willingness to not only be here today, but the questions that I have had, and aviation. I think we've got a good skeleton in Kentucky with all the different programs and so forth, and if we can just grab a hold of that and put some muscle on the skeleton, we can move Kentucky, make us number one in the aviation industry nationwide, and I think that's very important as we move forward. We do have some questions. Senator Higdon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate that. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today and talk about aviation, which is very important in Kentucky, and a lot of opportunities for careers and growth. I did want to mention, you brought up several times about the new caucus, Aviation Aerospace caucus here in the General Assembly, and it's two big cheerleaders we have for that, of course, is Representative Dixon and Robert Riggs. They have certainly been cheerleaders for that organization. So any legislator that wants to join that, I think it's very important as we go forward to support our aviation industry in Kentucky. With that said, I do have a question that probably Chairman Upchurch was going to ask eventually about fuel tax and how. Can you just briefly, so folks understand the fuel tax, how it's I don't know how much it is. I would like to know that, but we have some exemptions and some caps on that. Would you kind of explain how that's done here in Kentucky?
All right. So it's jet fuel tax is 6%, and that's not what we call avgas. Those are reciprocating engines, kind of like you have in your car. So this is jet engine fuel tax. That can be a corporate jet or a commercial jet, like a passenger jet or a UPS cargo jet or a Amazon or DHL. So they pay 6% for each gallon, just like a lot of us pay 6% when we go to the store. However, the carriers, or really any contributor, any one person that pays for jet fuel tax, it is capped at $1 million a year. So as a big carrier like UPS, when I used to work there, I worked there for 35 years, we were going through and I retired a couple years ago, and we were going through about 1 million gallons a day. So whether jet fuel tax is $2.50 a gallon or $3 a gallon, not sure what's being paid, but obviously you're going to hit that cap pretty quick. And so for the rest of the year, you don't pay into that jet fuel tax fund. And so that's where it comes from. And like Amazon they're not a carrier per se, but they have lease carriers that support them. And I think there's some legislation in 2016 that stated that if you represent carriers and you contract carriers, then you get that cap as well. So, and granted, if they paid that 6% all year long, that'd be a significant amount of money. And but that cap, the way it is now, has never changed for us since it came into, I think it was over 20, 25 years ago. So our funding has been pretty static over time. And so that's just a little bit of insight. Now, the avgas that I spoke to that comes from reciprocating engines, that goes, I believe, to the general fund and doesn't go to aviation at all. And every state seems to be a little bit different on how they do that. Like Tennessee, a state just to our south, has a big cargo carrier, and they were at 7%, their jet fuel tax, and they had no cap. And then I think it was 2015 they started implementing, using us as a model, started phasing in their cap. So they used to get, I think, ours is like, somewhere around 15 million, let's just say, is average over the past 3 years. They were bringing in about 70 million in their jet fuel tax. And they got that cap, and it's slowly going in. And it's to the point now where this year, the General Assembly kicked in another 50 million because they were down compared to what they were used to. So it's just kind of interesting when you look at other states compared to us, but we are behind compared to other states of state monies that go into aviation to support the general aviation fund. I know it's a long answer, but
and if I could make it longer, so that money goes into a fund. It's a Jet Fuel Tax Economic Development Fund, and then that's what's used to improve the airports. As Brad mentioned earlier, airport projects don't get completed within a biennium. They'll cross fiscal years. So each year we'll have an amount on deposit that appears to be available, but it's not, because it's committed to projects that will be completed in the following year or 2 years. In terms of the collections of jet fuel tax, I did provide Representative Upchurch with a schedule that showed the collections over the last 5 years. It does average $15 to $16 million, but with COVID, we were down about 12 or 13 million, I think, this past year, and the receipts appear to be recovering this year, but we're only 3 months in terms of the receipts we have. So just some additional background.
Okay, we do have just a few more questions and a lot more on the agenda. Representative Bojanowski, do you have a question?
Yes, I'll try to make it brief. So sometimes in this role, we have areas that we are not at all familiar with, and aviation is one for me. Can you just speak briefly on what who is using all of these different airports? In my lifetime, I can think of one friend, their family owned a private jet or a private plane. It wasn't a jet, and they were very wealthy. So are we primarily private use or business use, or maybe speak on the ratio of those? Who is using the airports?
Well, I'll start off a little bit and I'll turn it over to you. Well, everybody uses it. And really, general aviation, and even the FAA recognizes this through the establishment of that NIPIAS program, airports around the country. And that's the grassroots. That's where pilots, mechanics, and people in aviation, whether it's management or support of airports, that's where it all starts. You got to get your start somewhere. And that's essential. And the other aspect of that, probably the more important aspect that's for communities, is the business gateway that these airports represent. When there are a lot of businesses around the state, when you go to any one of the 120 counties, and the people that come in and invest, whether they're from in-state, let's say a bigger city like Louisville or the Covington area, and then go out to the rural areas where they're establishing warehouses and manufacturing facilities, or they're coming from out of state, they don't take an Uber, they don't drive a car for 4 hours, they take their corporate jets. And just like Commissioner Carter referenced earlier, when Ford made their announcement at the Capital City Airport, when they came in, I mean, the ramp was full of large private jets, and those corporate jets represent these people that run these big businesses. That's how they get around. And if you were to fly commercial, like you or I, most of us all do, it is very inefficient when you look at what's involved when they conduct business, and that's the reason corporate jets are justified. And they also fly in their engineers, they fly in their management team, they fly in parts when their facilities go down. They can get them there so much quicker. Even though you got UPS and DHL and Amazon and FedEx going overnight, they can get these from let's say Chicago to their manufacturing facility somewhere in Kentucky in a few hours. And that keeps that plant. A lot of these plants go around the clock. And I guess you probably have a little bit more to add, but that's how I see their role in the state.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that the airports can, they're different. So if you go to the Central Kentucky airport, where the folks from EKU will testify, you'll see training going on there just almost nonstop, training aircraft. Now they get corporate jets and private aviation in there. So, if you go there, that's what you'll see, where you have a vibrant training program. If you just come over to Capital City Airport and sit there for a few hours, you'll see all kinds. You'll see training. You'll see maybe an occasional private jet that you'll see a couple of people get off of. But most of the time, it's going to be corporate travel, where corporate executives are coming in, and they usually have several people with them. And then helicopter and military operations at our airports as well. So it kind of depends on which airport you go to in the Commonwealth. They all have kind of a individual character to them.
Okay, Representative Santoro.
Thank you. Good seeing you again, Commissioner.
Good to see you.
I just have a couple questions. A few years ago when we did this special funding, I was all for it. Glad you received it. It's a shame how our general aviation airports looked. Mm-hmm. I mean, they needed some maintenance. Like when you build a house, put a roof on every 20 years. Yeah. We didn't do anything, so I'm glad we're doing that. I think you already answered this. So the general aviation planes, are they paying into the jet fuel tax fund?
If it's essentially if it's a prop plane, it's probably, for the most part, it's probably burning avgas. It's not
paying into it like Amazon is.
Right. It's only on the jet. Well, it's only the jet fuel tax receipts are going into that fund and being used to improve the airports. The avgas that's burned in prop planes is going into the state general fund.
Okay, so the general aviation planes, so they're really not paying into improving the infrastructure funding.
No.
At all. I'm all for infrastructure. Man, I'm all over it. And I want to help you all like I do everyone else in transportation and in our waterways, because it's got to be done.
Right.
So they're not actually building up
No, and there's states out there where what you just mentioned, what I call avgas, the small prop airplane, that goes into the general aviation airports with general fund money, and then the jet fuel tax goes to general fund.
I will add to that, though, Representative Santoro. They are contributing to the development of those airports, though, because they're buying gas there. The airport's making a margin on the gas. They're renting hangars. So they do contribute to the development of the airport. It's just they don't do it through that tax
Through the
collection.
fund.
Yeah.
And just one more. I have a very large airport in my county, and it's just fantastic. And I noticed, and I've been reading a lot about this jet fuel tax because a lot of people are bugging me about it. Now, I noticed Georgia just eliminated theirs. I noticed Georgia just eliminated their jet fuel tax. And I have a lot of concerns, so I want to make sure we're playing fair here. I want to support you all, just want to get that out there.
Well, we, as Brad indicated, we just attended the conference of the state aviation directors, and the way states finance their general aviation airports varies. Even the assessment of the jet fuel tax and how they manage it once they collect it. Eric Frankel, who runs the Lexington airport, commissioned some research by the University of Kentucky on what our surrounding airports do, so that we would have that information as we develop the plan for going forward. Representative Santoro, I don't have a number, but aviation in Kentucky, and general aviation in Kentucky, merits investment beyond what we've been doing, as you just referenced. How we finance it is something I think we have to work through over the next few months, whether that comes from a state general fund appropriation or some sort of user-based tax format like we've used for 20 years is certainly subject to discussion.
I'm very much interested. Thank you.
Okay, we're kind of running behind on schedule. I know we've got 3 other questions, but what I'm going to do to keep the agenda moving, if the questioners, I'm looking over Representative Fleming, Senator Wheeler, and Senator Berg. If y'all don't mind, if you all going to stay around afterwards?
Yes.
We'll stay.
If you all don't mind, so we can just kind of keep the agenda moving, and we'll keep moving with the agenda. So.
Yeah, we'll stay around, and certainly if there's questions afterwards,
Okay.
You can feel free to call me or email. I'll get you an answer.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
All right, next on the agenda is Seth Cutter from CVG.
Seth, I don't see. Do I minimize this to get the next one up?
You can.
Do it that way? All right. And which one? That one?
This one, gotcha.
Oh, okay.
We're good.
Yep. Sorry. Yeah, it's still sharing.
still sharing.
So you're good.
All right. We'll keep this
Seth,
party moving.
Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Chairman Higdon and members of the committee for inviting us today. My name is Seth Cutter. I am Director of Communications and Government Affairs at CVG, Cincinnati Northern Kentucky International, but I'm wearing many hats today. I'm going to talk to this update of all 3 of our largest commercial services airports in the Commonwealth: Louisville Muhammad Ali International, SDF, Bluegrass Airport in Lexington, and then, of course, CVG. So just we'll try to expedite our way through some of these slides, but we included kind of the top highlights for you all from both a collective perspective and then individually kind of updates on where the individual airports are. So this is just an overview of what we'll talk about. Obviously, talk about the economic impact, as Commissioner Carter and Deputy Commissioner Schwant mentioned the overall economic impact of aviation in the state. We'll go into a little bit of depth on the commercial airports and then those individual updates, as I mentioned. So I know it's not lost on you all that our commercial airports, just like the rest of the entire aviation and airport system in our Commonwealth, are truly economic impact, economic and job generators for the state. Particular to, and I think Representative Santora was speaking about this, when you look at the three largest of the commercial airports, you look at both the number of jobs supported and then the individual economic impact for the three of us tops over $18 billion a year and supports more than 134,000 jobs. So a lot of that is driven by UPS, DHL, and Amazon. But those two figures, the 134,000 jobs and 18 billion, are airport-wide. All the airlines, all the support services, the airport authorities, etc. And then, of course, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, this figure is exclusive or specific, I should say, to SDF and CVG, but obviously we're producing in excess of, and this was a few years ago, $480 million a year in tax revenue generated, both sales from visitors, sales tax, and of course, payroll taxes. And then this slide here, you can see the breakdowns, but I wanted to point out for you all this 14 million passenger number. Obviously, what we do, I think, is pretty self-explanatory for those of you, as was mentioned earlier, fly commercial or have used our airports. But that 14 million passenger number is collective amongst the three of us, and that's, of course, pre-pandemic. But note that those are our friends and family. All three of our airports now are primarily local, meaning folks come in and out of the front door, whether it's residents, business folks, visitors. Those are people coming in and out of the front door, eating, shopping, visiting, doing business in the Commonwealth via our airports. And obviously our catchment areas, the FAA for commercial airports defines a catchment area. Where is the natural area in your region that you serve that people are coming from? So when you look at all three of our airports, we cover most of the state. That, as you all know, if folks aren't flying private or are doing training flights at the GA airports, they're coming in and out of our commercial airports and driving from different places to get there and then catch a flight. And then, of course, we'll get into the cargo impacts. So I am going to jump into individual airport updates. What you're seeing on the screen, we're going to start with, obviously, SDF Louisville Muhammad Ali. This is a look back at the last 24 months of passenger enplanements. So this is month by month since August 19 to August 21. And obviously, you can see how things really were impacted by the pandemic starting in mid-March, of course, of 20, and then we all bottomed out. You're going to see the same chart for Lexington and CVG, and it's nearly the same with different numbers on it. We've all followed a similar trajectory, which is positive in the notes there about Louisville in particular, which is seeing the introduction of 2 new airlines even despite the pandemic. Earlier in 2021, we had at Louisville Spirit Airlines, which is a budget carrier, began service to Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Then they later added Pensacola to that lineup, and then Fort Myers and Tampa will begin service on Spirit out of SDF in November. And then earlier this year, Breeze Airways is a brand new carrier, new in the U.S., but they selected Louisville as one of their startup locations and have service out of Louisville to Charleston, New Orleans, and Tampa. So those and then you can see some of the highlights there otherwise, but those announcements are really helping all of us weather the storm of what has certainly, as you can see, been a steep hit in the from the pandemic. And as was mentioned earlier, that's really kind of correlated with what we've seen on our financial impacts from the airport authority side as well. Okay, obviously we can't have a discussion about Louisville SDF without talking about air cargo and UPS. So obviously you all know Louisville International is the 5th busiest cargo airport in the world. Obviously one of the top in North America, and that is due in exclusive part thanks to UPS and all of its ancillary activities. But of course, as you all know, UPS is moving, as is DHL and Amazon at CVG, moving PPE, moving vaccine, moving other pieces of the supply chain that we've all heard about. And then, of course, has really seen an increase in volumes in the e-commerce segment for the express category that UPS, DHL serve. And obviously that's an important, very critically important stakeholder both for Louisville and at CVG with the demands that these carriers are placing on our facilities, our airfields, but then of course the economic impact that they're having through the creation and continued growth with jobs. I wanted to point out for you, you can read the list, I won't belabor the point, but this is a sampling of projects at Louisville International on the capital project side, right? We're talking about some of the runway rehab across the state with the general aviation airports. The same is true, just on a different scale at the commercial airports. So, many of you have heard, especially those in the Louisville metro area, that several passenger loading bridges to the tune of $7 million, I think they're $10 million, have been upgraded. That's only 7 of them. They're very expensive assets to build and maintain. Obviously, Louisville's been in the news lately. A terminal geothermal improvement project is underway that is going to be about $22 million of investment. And then other projects both in 22 and 23 include a lot of mechanical upgrades in their terminal to the tune of about $65 million. So obviously, these are just different assets. As we talked before about GA airports, commercial airports are just different assets to maintain and to support the level of economic activity that we provide require a different kind of investment. Okay, hopping over to Lexington Bluegrass Airport. If this chart looks familiar, you don't have deja vu. It's just different numbers and looks very similar to Louisville's month by month. I should note, you see kind of August there, the most recent month of August 21, dipping off a little bit. And for those of you in the Lexington area, you know that for 3 days in August, Lexington closed its runway for a major rehabilitation project, and obviously that it impacted all flights, and no flights were in and out for those 3 days, and then that project concluded and they reopened. But obviously, just like we've heard, asset management is a critical piece of our operation. And then, I won't belabor that point, but also to the idea of capital projects at LEX, you can see some of the pictures on the right were from that recent runway rehab, and that was about a $15 million project that they just completed. And then in 22 and 23, there's more than $19 million in airfield safety upgrades that are critical for Bluegrass Lex as well. Okay, hopping up to CVG. Again, very similar chart, different numbers. This is our month by month for the last 24 months. And one of the things, and this is true of all of us, but we always talk about at CVG in Northern Kentucky, is that, a lot of the travel demand that we have seen, you've seen the bars kind of increasing. And obviously at airports, that's seasonal. Summer, the holidays in November, December are going to be busier than right now when normally we see a lot of corporate traffic. What's critical for everybody to remember is that over the last 12 months where we've seen improvement, and particularly from this spring, that's all leisure demand. I mean, almost exclusively we've seen recovery out of the leisure segment, which is why you have airlines like Breeze and Spirit, and up at CVG we just had Alaska Airlines start nonstop service to Seattle this May, which is tremendous, but these are primarily leisure markets, and corporate demand still significantly lags, as you know from other segments of the economy, is still significantly behind where it was in the pre-pandemic times. So just like we've seen the last few months kind of taper off with the airlines pulling back service because of the Delta variant, until we see recovery in the corporate demand segment for commercial traffic, we're not going to see a full pre-pandemic recovery at our commercial airports. It was mentioned before, Deputy Schwant mentioned about Amazon. I wanted to share some pictures with you because this is new and news for you all. If you haven't been up our way, Representative Centura was referencing, the Amazon Air Hub. They're doing the project, as you see here in front of you, is an aerial shot over toward their facility on the far right, where you see some yellow airplanes off in the distance. That's DHL's facility. This very much mimics what you see with the operation UPS has in Louisville, but that's essentially what Amazon is building. The site became operational in early August. It's been 4 years up to that point, and then they're going to continue building the facility. The first phase, where that like black wall is, that's a temporary wall where all the cars are parked, kind of to the right of your screen, and they'll continue building the facility out through 2026. And you can see on day one there in early August, the first aircraft being loaded, unloaded with their team off the ramp there. So it's an impressive facility, and I think this has been mentioned before when we talk about workforce. Kentucky will be the only state, as far as we know, with not one, not two, but 3 air cargo hubs in this country and across North America. It's a huge advantage to not only the aviation industry, but our retailers, our manufacturers, the speed of time to market, because you have access to not only UPS, DHL, and Amazon to get your goods out, is, as was mentioned, an economic development strategy that we work closely, obviously, with KDA and then the Cabinet for Economic Development to continue to grow as well. This is just, I won't belabor the point, this is a snapshot of our property, and I wanted to share with you the the Louisville Sdf Map is very similar. It's a large facility. We have 7,700 acres up at CVG, and you can see, I wanted to share with you the blue, the darker blue, and then the lighter blue are portions of our property that remain airport property that are leased to the exclusive use of Amazon. They have an option on other land. You can see just the scope and size of that operation. And again, it's very similar at SDF, which presents, as I mentioned, unique facility requirements. This is a similar list as we saw with Louisville SDF, but at CVG, we're just wrapping up a $175 million rental car facility project. Hopefully in the next few weeks, because our community has been impacted, we're wrapping up a major rebuild of our longest runway to the tune of nearly $70 million. And then you can see other projects there as well. Looking ahead to 22, you can see the sampling of a little over $40 million is just a sampling of our approved and appropriated projects that are mainly, like Louisville, are mainly mechanical and other upgrades to the facilities. These are aging facilities. U.S. Congress has not done enough over the last 20 years to increase airport funding based off the user fees we get to support these projects. So our finance teams are great and are getting continuously creative in how we stack these projects, et cetera. But one of the things I wanted to kind of conclude with, and then I'll shut up so we can get on with the good stuff with EKU and Somerset, is a snapshot of our financial situation. You can see the columns there for Louisville, Northern Kentucky, and Lexington. And this is just a snapshot, really, of what I was describing before, how the pandemic has impacted our financial situation. So large operations are just different and require a lot more money to maintain. And you can see the top line before the pandemic, we were all pretty hefty budgets, us in Louisville, near $120 million a year, which includes debt service and grant funding. We immediately reduced those budgets. Everybody put together cost-saving measures, and then we still lost significant revenue from the missing, primarily passenger service traffic, and that's where you see commercial airports charge fees. We don't take taxes, we charge fees for our users. So the airlines pay landing fees, et cetera, and that's where you saw the most significant lost revenue. As was mentioned earlier, 2021 has looked better. We obviously continued to reduce and cut costs and enable cost-saving measures. We're slowly getting back, but on an annualized basis, are still not realizing the same budget numbers as pre-pandemic. And then you can see, because I know this has come up before, the commercial airports, as well as aviation in general, were recipients of significant federal relief funds through all three: CARES, CRISA at the end of last year, and then ARPA this spring, which you can see how that's broken out by each airport, which have been hugely helpful. And we're very grateful for Congress and our delegation approving those different packages. But it's not been enough to cover the holes. And what our industry analysts and what our airport authority boards are projecting is 2025 to 2026 would be the soonest we recover to full pre-pandemic numbers, both from a passenger employment perspective and then, of course, the associated budget. And those federal monies have been a lifeline to keep the lights on, to ensure we can continue paying our debt service on the already obligated projects. So with that, I'm glad to take any questions, or we can wait till afterward and keep this show moving. But thank you, Chair, and thank you, Committee.
Thank you, Seth. Very good presentation. I think it doesn't fall short on any one of us, the importance of the commercial airports that we have in Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
With the carriers that you all have coming in, that pays that jet fuel tax, it helps fund everything else we're trying to do.
Yes, sir.
We appreciate you all and everything that you're doing at your respective airports. I don't have any questions myself, but I think Representative Fleming has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. And I do like that slide up there, because it seems like when you're in the left seat, you're always, no, I'm sorry, the one before, the question answer.
Oh, the Q&A, that one.
That's what.
There we go.
I'm always asking questions of myself and trying to find answers when you fly. So it's like,
there you go.
Anyway, that's a side off the wall comment. But anyway, I want to ask you and to the commissioner as well as one of my questions to him. How would you realign tax policies and incentives to support aviation growth that incorporates education within high schools as well as universities, and support the 600 plus businesses that contribute about $10 billion to the community?
So I won't speak for the commissioner, but representative, from the commercial airport perspective, obviously, as Chairman Upchurch mentioned, our carriers, and again, it's not always your DHLs or Amazons. Atlas Air is one, ATSG, UPS Airlines does fly for UPS, but you have those variety of carriers that are obviously paying into the jet fuel tax fund. Our perspective, as was mentioned, Eric Frankel, our CEO at Bluegrass Lexington, has commissioned the Gatton School to look at other state models. We know from our industry, and our airport leaders talk to one another across North America, that other states like North Carolina invest significantly, and not even out of a dedicated jet fuel tax fund, but general fund appropriations to support capital projects across the spectrum of the aviation system, GA airports, commercial airports, workforce development, et cetera. Our airports, the commercial airports, have invested significant time with our teams in the realm of workforce development and trying to work with the EKUs of the world, other players, to do what we can in terms of exposing our young people to the many careers in aviation. But obviously we're limited by time and resources. We would welcome that conversation about what is the best way, and I think that's what this Gatton study will look at. What is the best way to support all of the components that make our state a leader in this aviation industry?
Well, is that a duplication of the 2017 report that came out?
Having looked at it, I think it'll be a little bit different and primarily look at other state models as examples of how other state, the General Assemblies, have elected to fund different pieces. So there may be some update to the numbers before, but I think it'll be a good refresh.
One quick comment, Mr. Chairman, that is, I would like to encourage the Aviation Caucus that we can get a group together to formulate a strategy to take an inventory of all the programs from a university and high school level to all the businesses out there, and take a holistic approach to all this so we can get a grasp of what's going on, because it's all being fragmented to me, and I get it. But we're talking about this, we're talking about that. We've got to have a group, and I think that's what the president and the speaker had the envision, to come together in a cooperative effort to take an understanding of what's going on, so we can put something for the 2022 session. So timing is of the essence.
Yes, sir.
And I think we're trying to get something together. So please contact either Representative Dixon or myself, and the Chairman Higdon in terms of this. So thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
All right. Are there any other questions? Oh, Representative Wheatley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Seth,
Yes, sir.
for representing. We certainly recognize the tremendous growth and importance of things that are happening in our area, in Northern Kentucky, and the cooperation of local officials, along with state officials and the FAA, and everything that has to go into place, as you said, to have success in the aviation field.
Yes, sir.
And my question is kind of broad, and it may require some estimations. But we heard the Deputy Commissioner and the Commissioner talk about the fuels tax and the ways that the state has some income related to aviation. The dollars that you presented for the work being done at SDF and LEX and CVG far or outpace that amount that was talked about that comes into the state coffers. So can you give an estimate of public versus private funding for those projects? And you could just work with those three major airports, from from the federal, from the state and local governments, that you get dollars in the public sector and the private sector, just a
Sure. No, it's an excellent question. Commercial airport funding is very unique. It really depends on the project, but you are correct that of all of the listed projects, and that's maybe like an eighth or a 16th of what all of our capital plans show, are funded from various sources. A lot of it is federal funding based on the number of enplanements, or for us and for CVG in Louisville, an air cargo factor plays into it as well. So there's significant federal funding. For instance, our $70 million rehab of our runway was largely funded by the feds, and then we, the airport authority, are responsible for providing a match. That match can fluctuate. Largely, it either comes from the airport authority or, usually it's the airport authority. Our three airports historically have not received state funding for capital projects. Obviously, that's a conversation we're interested in having or looking at. How can the state support the system? From that perspective, I should say that otherwise, all of these projects are very few of them are funded from any private sources. The private sources would be the funds, the local funds that the airport receives from our various sources of revenue. And commercial airports largely make revenue from, as I mentioned, landing fees from the airlines, passenger fees, like if you park at the airport. And those are our largest sources of non-aeronautical revenue or aeronautical revenue. But again, a lot of the aeronautical revenue go into a very complicated, that I don't understand, formula that the airlines actually approve our budgets every year from an operating perspective, because the airlines, to your question about private funding, the airlines are the ones who are charged the user fees for a lot of the operating expenses, and those are split based on a formula at the commercial airports.
That's everything. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Alrighty. Thank you, everyone.
Seth, I don't think we have any more questions, so thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
Next up, we have representatives from the greatest university in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Eastern Kentucky University. We're going to have roll call on that. I figured I'd get by with that, but Ethan Witt, who's the Assistant Vice President for Government and Community Relations, and Dennis Sennett, who is the Executive Director of the Aviation Department. Gentlemen, welcome. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and go Colonels. It's always good to see you and members of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know several of you have had the opportunity to meet with us down in Richmond, visit the airport, visit campus. So it's good to see you again in Frankfort, and we'll extend that invitation to any of you who haven't had a chance to visit our program to come on down and spend some time with us.
Chairman Upchurch, Chairman Higdon, thank you very much. Members of the committee, thanks very much for the opportunity to be up here and represent EKU, the aviation program. So we'll get right to the slides. Here's a real quick overview of what I'm going to try to cover for you this afternoon. Real quick, just a background about the program for those of you that are not familiar with it. So the program's been around for approximately 40 years. We actually gave our first BS degree in 1991, about 8 years after the start of the program. And then 2010 is when we actually brought it within the confines and the purview of the university. Prior to that, the program was doing all of its flight training via a third party. We rented out all of the actual flight training of it. The academic side was done by the university. The actual flight training was done by, again, a third party. And then at that time, we made, it was the business sense. We had a little bit of dissatisfaction with some of the students about how that was working. We made the decision, to bring it under the confines of the university. We started leasing our first airplanes at that time. And then the two big milestones for us was in 2013 is when we earned the coveted FAA 1,000-hour restricted ATP certificate. That's something that we cherish very dearly. The FAA comes on a yearly basis and inspects the entire program, specifically along with focusing on safety and efficiency of the program. We continue to, to cherish that certificate. And then we made the big decision in 2018. We had been leasing all of our airplanes prior to that through a variety of third-party aircraft leasers. We continued to pay the lease after, a number of years of doing some business analysis of it. We made the decision to start purchasing our airplanes. It was a better business model for us. Just to set the baseline for the program, we actually have 3 concentrations. The pro-flight concentration is the one that gets obviously a lot of the visibility on the program. A vast majority of our students are focused on that as that concentration. And I wanted to take a couple of seconds to focus on 2 specific concentrations. The aerospace management concentration is a growing concentration and focus for the university and our program. As everyone was saying, Commissioner Carter and a number of the other speakers here today were focusing on the breadth and depth of aviation here in the Commonwealth. The pilot need is drastic, and again, 500,000 over the next couple of years is what the Boeing just put out. But there's also another 500,000 workforce job opportunities that are focused on the enormous infrastructure support that the aviation industry is creating here. So the aerospace management is continuing to grow. And we are starting to fill that void. As a matter of fact, you'll see in a later slide, it's almost approximately 20, it's taken over, coming up to about 20% of the program is aerospace management. The other one I wanted to highlight on is starting in the fall of next year, we're going to be offering a UAS concentration, which is, again, a significant improvement and a significant step forward for our program. We talked about some of the high schools. It was previously mentioned just prior to me coming up here. We currently have a pathway with 49 Commonwealth high schools. That's the aviation pathway. We continue to expand that each and every year. We are working with numerous high schools to try to increase that. Along with that, we through a variety of programs, most of the online, we can offer some dual credit. There's up to 12 credits that a student coming in from the high school, if they would be a rising freshman with us, they can get up to 12 credits. Interestingly, along that, on the bottom side of that slide, you can see that we were offering private and private pilot's license coming in. We're starting to see more and more students coming into our program as a freshman with their private pilot's license. That's wonderful for us. It gives them a year in advance, a year ahead of many of their contemporaries. Oftentimes, they result in, while they are seniors, they're being paid as a CFI because they've come in that year that they would have taken to get their private as a freshman, they've already got, so they're a year ahead of their contemporaries. And again, it is a significant advantage to those students that are coming in. And it's a great advantage to us because while they are taking academic classes, they are also having already fulfilled all of their FAA certificates. They can be employed by our program as a CFI, making a decent, a little bit amount of money. Next slide is, again, just to recap some of the numbers. We are arguably one of the fastest growing programs in the university. I'll show you on another slide here just some of the enrollments over the last couple of years. We are proudly the only four-year university-based program in the Commonwealth. Those are the numbers for this year, 329 students coming in. We plan to graduate approximately 50 in December. And then we'll probably, in the January time, couple that with just approximately a 50 or so more incoming freshmen in the January timeframe. So we're running a steady 329 right at this particular time. And there, again, some of the demographics that we're out of the current populace. Just trying to show graphically some of the breadth and depth and arguably the reputation of the program. We have 20 students in the program from 23 different states. I was telling Mr. Witt earlier today, the program we hold bi-monthly prospective students briefings at the university, and just over the since the beginning of the fall semester, we've had students and parents come in from 10 additional states that are not represented on that slide. So we're getting more and more from out of state. There's growth problems, and that's a good thing in many ways. And again, the reputation of the program continues to grow. Real quick, just the enrollment. As you can see, if we were to hold the numbers behind the slides, the bar graph there, we've doubled the size of the program in less than 4 years. We are at 171, just under 171 students in 2017, and we're close to 350 at this particular time. So again, the program continues to grow each and every semester. And then any information or any brief on any kind of flight program, you got to have flight hours associated with it. And again, this is just to show, again, try to reflect some of the growth of the program. 2017, we flew just under 4,000 hours. And in this coming fiscal year, we anticipate flying over 16,000, 4 times the amount of flights that were safely conducted 4 years ago. There was a little downturn in the COVID, as was mentioned by my predecessor here briefing you. We lost 2 months of flight time during that period of time, and then we rapidly came back up to speed on that. Just real quick, current status of the airplanes. We need to meet the demand of our students. We should be at around between 32 and 35 airplanes. In a later slide, we'll have an opportunity to say thank you to the Assembly and to the members here for some funding that you recently have allowed us to use. But we currently have 27 airplanes. We're aggressively looking for 172s. We're happy with the 172 fleet that we have, and the Seminoles as the twin-engine airplanes for all of our multi-engine training. Simulators, again, use of the simulators is built in throughout the syllabus. We have advanced aircraft training devices, AATDs, that are familiar. Anybody that's familiar with the program, or flight training, with use of those are allowed to be put in the logbooks for our students, and we are again aggressively have them integrated. Use of the simulators integrated into the program. The last bullet there, we're very excited about, is we recently, just this past summer, started a virtual reality simulation flight lab. It's state of the art. There are only a few universities in the United States that actually have it. A number of the service academies that are producing pilots have it as well. We currently, through a Appalachian Regional Commission grant of about $150,000, we bought 24 of these sleds over the summer. We pushed 12 of those out to some of those high schools that we were mentioning previously for their programs. We did a week-long education process as to how to use them, what some of the syllabuses that are incorporated into the simulators themselves, pushed them out. We have 12 remaining that we are currently using and fully integrating into our system. Again, pretty state-of-the-art. It allows any student that's struggling in the airplane to come back in, just like any other simulator. You can push reset, go back and do stall warnings, all of the technical aspects of it, bad weather, those types of things, and really improves the efficiency and effectiveness of some of the training.
Well, as Dennis said, we've had some tremendous support from the General Assembly in recent years, and I want to highlight a few of those items. In the fiscal year 21 budget, EKU Aviation received support from the General Assembly. We tremendously appreciate that. It's had a real impact on our program. Since that time, as Dennis mentioned earlier, we've accelerated our transition from leased aircraft to university-owned aircraft, which is a much more efficient business model for us. Since July of 2020, we've acquired 17 aircraft. I know Dennis will tell you this is a very difficult market in which to find quality used aircraft at a good price, and he and his team have been working nonstop since that time to find airplanes. They've traveled all over the country to acquire these 17, and we're excited to add more as we're able to find them, and they're looking every day to grow that number to meet our continued growth. We've also added a second temporary flight facility as a training space for our students at Central Kentucky Regional Airport. We're under a lot of FAA guidelines in terms of briefing space and classroom space that has to be available at the airport. And as we've continued to grow, those additional temporary facilities have been vital as we work toward construction of the new flight training center that we hope to begin building next year at Central Kentucky Regional Airport, which will be the new home of EKU Aviation. It will allow us to transition more of our operations to the airport, including the simulators, which are currently on our main campus in Richmond. And thanks to the General Assembly's support, we've been able to accelerate that process. We also have a very valuable relationship with Central Kentucky Regional Airport. Central Kentucky Regional Airport is a joint venture between the City of Richmond, the City of Berea, and Madison County. And thanks to House Bill 158 that the General Assembly passed in the last session, we were able to amend the municipal airport statutes to allow a public university with an aviation program to become a member of a municipal airport board. Actually, as of this month, EKU is now an official member of the board. It's been expanded from 6 seats to 8 seats, and along with those 3 governmental entities, the president of our university and our board of regents are able to appoint 2 members of that board. We also serve as the fixed-based operator at Central Kentucky Regional Airport. The airport manager is an employee of EKU. The university runs the day-to-day business operations of the airport, and it also gives a tremendous opportunity for our students to work as student workers in that setting and learn more about the day-to-day management of the airport. And I will mention that Central Kentucky Regional Airport is now the 3rd busiest general aviation airport in the state. And right there you can see some drawings of the flight training center that we hope to begin construction on early next year.
And finally, I believe this is our last slide. So we're anticipating, again, fall of next year. It's within the very real possibility that we'll be over 400 students enrolled in the program. We're going to, again, continue to need additional airplanes. We're excited about the prospects of the new flight training center coming along. We're going to deal with, again, any kind of growth is going to bring some challenges as far as staffing is concerned. And at some point, we're going to reach max capacity down there at Central Kentucky Regional Airport. So we're going to have to start looking at satellite operations, remote operations at some of the outlying fields. And that's going to bring, again, its own challenges, especially as we ensure that we are in compliance with the FAA requirements that are associated with that. And again, as I mentioned previously, we're excited about the onset of the initiative to bring a UAS concentration into the program.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Just a couple of questions. You talked about kind of outgrowing your airspace, I guess, if you
Yes,
will.
sir.
How soon, with the enrollment that you currently have, do you think you'll be reaching that max capacity where you're at?
I think we're comfortable with the 350, 330 where we are now. There are days that we are at capacity, but if we continue to grow like we are, I would anticipate probably next fall we're going to be having to come up with other options, sir.
So you are forecasting some pretty significant growth over the next few years.
Yes, sir. If it continues to grow as it has been, yes, sir. Again, I anticipate to be at 400 students next fall.
My next question is, I took my son to Cleveland, to the Cleveland Air Show 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I noticed there was another school there, Bowling Green State University had their
Yes, sir.
tent set up, and they were recruiting students. Of course, I know it's kind of out of the service area, but
Yes, sir.
And then I know Middle Tennessee State University, just a little bit south of me. How do you all feel that you rank among your peer groups as far as recruiting students to come to the program? How do you all feel you stack up against the competition?
Yes, sir.
And then what do you think it will take to get you on par with being very competitive with the number one schools out there, I guess?
Yes, sir. That's a great question. I appreciate it. I think quality. I can say this unequivocally. On quality of instruction and the product that we turn out with regard to the professional flight student and the management students, we are on par with any of the major universities. You talk Emory-Riddle, North Dakota State, any of those. We are on par. As a matter of fact, unofficially, we consistently get feedback from regional airline carriers that are very impressed with the quality of the student that we are producing. So we're very proud of that, and rightly so. As far as recruiting, the challenge that we have is our infrastructure is dated. When you go to near competitors, Kent State, Auburn, Middle Tennessee State, Bowling Green, have brand new facilities, a brand new terminal that welcome their students, newer airplanes, those types of things. It's tough to compete with them, but we are. We have recently had 2 students that went to Emory-Riddle and came back and said, I'm so glad I'm part of this program. You guys care more about us, the flights. The same with a couple of the other universities that are, again, across the border that we are competing with. So, again, quality of instruction, I am convinced, without a doubt, we're on par with the major universities. Where we, as far as recruiting, where we are a little bit behind the power curve, to be perfectly honest with you, is the status of our infrastructure. The main thing is the new flight training center that, again, we have on the drawing books. We're very excited about that. We need to get it over the goal line, so to speak, with some other issues with that. But on campus, we're on par, sir.
When you say infrastructure, I know you're talking about the building, but are you also talking about the aircraft
Yes,
themselves?
sir. Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know one of the planes they had there at Cleveland was an SR-22. So
yes, sir.
That's
yes, sir. Yes,
hard
sir.
to compete against.
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah, they've and Auburn and other universities that we're competing with have, again, members of major airlines that are in the C-suite where they say, hey, we're going to come in and drop $5 or $6 million into your program. We don't have, unfortunately for us, we don't have that kind of recent graduates or graduates that have been, out for 20, 25 years that are now made their way up into the C-suite of Delta, FedEx, those types of things, and say, hey, we're gonna fund a brand new flight training center, or we're gonna drop $4 million so that you can buy brand new airplanes.
I believe that's part of the reason you're here today, so we can
yes,
make a case to help
yes,
get you there.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. We do have a couple of questions. Representative McPherson.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. More than a question, more of a comment. So I've got a nephew that went through one of those programs. He started out in high school and was licensed, and then went through your program. He's going to graduate here in December. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm part of the caucus probably because of that.
Yes, sir.
And I want to definitely tell you how much those small airports mean to these facilities. I know we've had some discussion about that this morning, but he flies people in and out. He has his commercial license now, and he flies people in and out of there
yes, sir.
all the time. People that you just don't think and you don't know that are leaving and going and doing business in other parts of the state or other parts of the country and coming back. I mean, it mushrooms on itself. And I would just offer any help that I could and support you in any way. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Senator Berg. Finally got to you. Senator Berg, can you turn your mic on, please?
I'm sorry. As far as your graduates, what percentage of them get employment in their desired field upon graduation? What's your average employment rate?
I can unequivocally say it's 99%.
That's awesome.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. And
Yes,
then
ma'am.
the cost of the program versus their potential earning
Yes, ma'am.
is reasonable.
Yes, ma'am. And the return on investment, the cost of the program is right around $58,000. This is just flight fees. I'm just talking flight fees, in addition to the tuition, those kinds of things. The average starting salary for pilots out of the first year is between $55,000 and $60,000. Most of them are getting between a $5,000 and $10,000 signing bonus with regional airlines. If I could just take one additional minute, here's
Certainly.
A story. Every spring we have a career fair held down in Keene Johnson in the April timeframe. We invite all of the regional airlines to come and participate. Airports for the management, it's packed. 2 years ago, prior to COVID, I literally was behind a student that went to one regional airline and said, in the regional airline, the individual was getting ready to graduate, had not graduated yet, had his resume, had met all of the certificates, went to a regional airline and said, here's my name. The regional airline said, I will sign you a conditional letter of employment. So when you get your total amount of hours, here's what your starting salary is, here's a signing bonus. That student went 4 desks down to another regional airline, basically said the same thing. The regional airline basically made the same offer, and he said, this is what the signing bonus that I'm getting from them is here. Can you up that? Can you make it sweeter? Can you give me a little bit more? And they said, yes, you can. So that's what we are producing here in the Commonwealth. So,
Awesome.
Pilots
awesome.
and capitalists.
Thank you. If
Yes.
I could follow up with a second question.
Yes.
I wasn't able to grab all the numbers because the slides went pretty quickly, but it looked to me like your current class, out of 329, you had 45 women.
Yes, ma'am.
Which I calculated really quickly is about 13%.
Okay.
What are you all doing to try to increase enrollment among females and minorities in this state? Because it looked from the brief numbers that I saw that you have that problem on both sides.
Yes, ma'am.
What's your plan? What's your goal?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We during the summer we take every advantage that we can to get out into the community, underserved communities, and talk about the program. We need. It's on me, ma'am, and I will be. I have not had the resources and the time to get out there, and it is an area of focus that we have identified previously that needs to improve. We work with the National Society of Black Engineers to try to get some of the camps and some of the students that come in from underserved. We have tried to get with the Explorers Camp and trying to get word out there about our program. We work very closely with the Aviation Museum in Lexington each summer to trying to get women and underserved communities involved in the program. It is something that we need to focus, and it is solely on me to do that.
A quick follow-up. I appreciate
ma'am.
your honesty on that, and I would encourage you very,
Yes,
very
ma'am.
much. And part of what I would look at is how many female and how many minority teachers do you have in your program?
Yes, ma'am.
Because that really does, when you've got recruits coming in and they can see somebody there that they feel like this is somebody I want to work with, it does make a difference. So I would encourage you to look at those numbers
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well. And thank you for a wonderful
Yes,
presentation.
ma'am.
I really appreciate
And
it.
I would be negligent if I didn't also talk about, we have a student organization called Women in Aviation. That is a wonderful organization. It's nationwide. we have a chapter, and they are out routinely trying to recruit women into the program. So,
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think there are any other questions. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation.
Yes, sir.
We really appreciate what you are doing there at Eastern. And hang on just a sec. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Next up, we've got Dr. Castle with Somerset Community College, which is the greatest community college in Kentucky. Just want to clarify that. I'm an alumni of both EKU and.
So that's the problem.
Yes, sir, and we're not paying you because we can't afford to, so.
You'd be surprised how cheap I can be bought.
We very much appreciate the compliments today, Chair Upchurch committee members. My name is Kerry Castle. I have with me Mr. Chris Hall, who is the program director, chair, department chair for the technical programs at the college, and also Mr. Donnie Hammonds, who is the aircraft maintenance technology program coordinator. As you've heard in all of the aviation descriptions so far, I much appreciated each one. We feel, of course, that the mechanic side is a very, very important role in all this, because without all this, obviously, planes won't get off the ground. They won't get off the ground without pilots either, but you have to have a very specialized and a very focused technician to do that kind of work. SCC understands the needs for those logistics and the transportation efforts and for training in the Commonwealth, and is the oldest of the only 2 such programs in the state. We understand that our graduates, what our graduates mean to aerospace and the aerospace industry. We also know that aviation exports for aerospace products and parts were leading the state last year with 14 billion plus in revenue, and that is nearly 10 million more than the motor vehicle related exports as well. Personally, I do know what it takes to be FAA certificated. I earned my airframe and power plant technician in 1986, and I have been a department chair of 2 schools just like the one here at Somerset Community College. I take this kind of personal. I'm a little biased towards the technician side of it, and it's my pleasure here to give this over to Chris and Donnie to share SCC's story about aviation maintenance.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. As he said, my name is Chris Hall. I'm the department chair of Career and Technical at Somerset Community College, and really we're just excited to be here and share about our Part 147 aviation school. And what that means is we work with the FAA. It's an approved curriculum so that we may produce graduates. And as you all have heard already today, with all that's going on in aviation, to keep these planes running, we need to continue to produce aviation maintenance technicians here in the state. As we recruit, particularly in the south central and southeastern part of Kentucky. We were just, me and Dean Bradford, who's with us today, we were at Corbin High School this morning to talk to students, of which 34% of them in Knox County grew up in poverty. Many of them are surviving on an average family wage of about $29,000. What you're going to see is an opportunity for them in 5 semesters through our A&P license and aviation maintenance program, an opportunity to double what they grew up in. And I'm extremely proud of the strides that we've made recently to expand our program. You'll see that in one of our slides, and to incorporate, to go back to the question that, from the previous speaker, women and minorities into those career pathways. Typically, in years past, when I had the opportunity to go speak with high schools and ATCs, many times they'd only bring some of the young men in to hear. And today we got to speak to all 200 of the freshmen, and we do need to continue to recruit students earlier, particularly the young ladies and minorities, so that they can begin to make decisions. Thank you, by the way, for the dual credit scholarship. It is a game changer for many of our students who can begin their college career while they're still in high school and begin to look at especially some of the technical programs that we offer. And then, of course, the Work Ready Scholarship allows us here in Kentucky to stay competitive, to produce those students in those high-wage, high-demand programs like we offer at Somerset Community College. So a little bit about us. Let me make sure I know how to get to the next slide here. Which one's the button here?
There you go.
This one?
No.
Go ahead.
Let's get in the slideshow.
Now?
Yeah, it should work. There you go.
All right, as you see, and you've already heard today, aviation continues to grow in the state of Kentucky, and that carries over into the aviation maintenance technician roles that we train there at Somerset Community College. If you just look at, like I said, average salary. This is, by the way, an average salary for someone who has an A&P license or went through our program. By the way, when I mentioned the A&P, if there's any question about that, that is an FAA licensure of either airframe, which is pretty much anything on the plane besides the motor, and then the power plant. And many of our students come and they actually get the A&P license, which is both of those, but they don't necessarily have to. They can get the A or the P and certainly go out there and get in the employment field with that. The trend, as you see here, it continues to point upward. We are recently have expanded our program to keep up with that, and I know we've had some folks here from CVG, and they've came down repeatedly to recruit our students and tell us they need even more to keep up with demand here in the state. The certificates, diploma, and degree that we offer, there you can see the airframe maintenance technician, the power plant maintenance technician, the diploma, and then finally the AAS degree. We've been doing this for a while. In fact, we opened in 1969, and we continue to offer these certificates and diploma and degree. We encourage our students to go on and get that AAS degree. As we know, that's oftentimes the threshold for most companies when they're looking at opportunity for students or graduates to get into supervision. But, back to what I had mentioned earlier, the big prize in this is the A&P license. When students get that A&P license, opportunity just opens up to them. They can go and get a job not only in the state, but anywhere in the world with that license. As you can see, we continue to strategically try to increase the number of students that we are graduating. Just in 2017, we were at 44 students. This year, due to a recent expansion to an evening program, we're already up to 66. And over the next couple years, we're looking to get well into 80s and 90s, and really the sky's the limit. As you can tell, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Some of the things that we face, recruiting, to convince young ladies and young men that this is an opportunity for them here in the state to earn an unbelievable starting wage and work for some of the largest employers in the world. Many times we run into a small town kind of thought process as, staying around Whitley County, Knox County, McCreary County, Wayne County. But these type of opportunities, we're really excited to tell more and more students about just what aviation maintenance can bring to their future. We also work with our veterans. The VALO program is a program that we work with folks who have got veteran experience. Donnie can share a little bit about that if you have any questions about what we do with that. We take that veteran experience that they have and credit for prior learning so that they do not have to necessarily go through the entire 5 semesters. So they can come to us and eventually get their A&P license, get out in the employment field even more quickly. And as I said before, the number of females in aviation maintenance proportionately is higher in our AMT program than any of our other technical programs. So we are beginning to reach that audience, but there's a lot more work that we need to do. As I said, recruiting, just getting to those prospective students earlier to inform them of this great career pathway. Some of the other things that we can struggle with, you've heard several comments today about purchasing airplanes. We are we're trying this year to purchase our first airplane since 1991. They're hard to come by. They are not cheap. And so whether it's equipment or even aircraft, that is something that we have to plan and work with, even some of our partners in the industry to receive any type of equipment they may be willing to donate to keep that program growing and moving forward.
Maybe we can get a joint thing between EKU and Somerset where you can work on their planes.
There you go. We've also just listed here most of our major employers for our AMT grads. As you see there, PSA, FEAM, MRO, Lockheed Martin, Thoroughbred Aviation, Medical Helicopters based in Kentucky, Wheels Up, and even some private airline companies. Many of you may look at that and say, well, where are the big employers at? When we talk about that starting wage, when we start talking about employers hiring our graduates, typically that's the wage, and these are the companies that they would see when they first graduate. But once they get 2 or 3 years of experience, then that's when you see that transition many times to UPS, DHL, Amazon, and of course that salary goes way up. And then we start talking about 6 figures for those student or graduates. And for me, and I wanted to definitely have this slide in here, what makes the SEC Aviation Maintenance Technology Program so special? It's the instructors. When you have instructors that have over 60 years of experience, they are the ones that connect with these students. They prepare them for the A&P test, as Dr. Castle alluded to earlier, was mentioning to me that is a written, a practical, and an oral test for each one of those. So they need to be prepared to go in there and to test for that license. So definitely our instructors. We've just hired our first minority instructor for our evening program, so we're extremely proud to have him with the program. And I think all of those things will just continue to help us grow and try to keep up with the market out there. And of course, you can see here, we included a couple pictures of our, it's a little over 11,000 square foot hangar that we do our labs there at SEC. And are there any questions?
Well, thank you for your presentation. Got some questions here just saying, but before you do, I'd just like to say this, this meeting, I think we've kind of come full circle, talking about aviation and Kentucky's future. Not only do we have the carriers at the major airports, but we also have the EKUs that are training the pilots that can go to work for the carriers. But in addition to that, we've got you all at Somerset Community, which are doing the airplane maintenance that can fix the plane. So I think we sit in Kentucky, I think, at a threshold, and what we do with it from here is going to be up to us moving forward to make sure that Kentucky leads the way. So thank you all for what you are doing at Somerset Community College. Representative Lewis, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo the chairman's comments. And Dr. Castle, you've always been a pleasure to work with and showing me the schools. You all bring up several great points, though, and I really like the fact that you are focusing on availability of classes, because, I mean, in our area, of course, I think the evening classes, that's a great idea and helps so many people. Where this is a growing industry and it seems to be booming from your projections, are you having any issues finding instructors?
I'll let them answer that, but short term, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, it's really hard to find qualified instructors that's got enough experience to come in there and for us to comfortably let them teach our students. And there again, it's all about the funds, money, able to pay them a decent salary to come in and do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you all.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead.
I'll be really quick. Gentlemen, could you, I asked a question a few minutes ago about taking inventory of programs. Do y'all have the ability to pull together all the community colleges programs that are available regardless of the discipline within the A&P arena?
Yes. All 16 of the KCTCS colleges, their courses count the same no matter where you go. So if I understood your question correctly, the only other one that teaches A&P coursework is Jefferson. So those courses and our courses are interchangeable. So you could take any course at either one and it would still count the same.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, had some technical difficulties up here. Are there any other questions? All right, well, gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been we're coming in just under 2 hours, so that is great. It's been a very informative committee meeting. I appreciate everyone's testimony, and we'll kind of get to work from here and see what direction we need to go in. But before I close, want to remind everybody that our next meeting will be Monday, November the 15th at 1 p.m. It's a little bit off schedule from normal because of one of the legislative conferences, so keep that in mind. Being no other business, we do now stand adjourned.